Welcome to your astrological forecast for the week of Monday, September 23rd through Sunday, September 29th, 2024. This is one of the more intense weeks of this year for sure. We don't technically have an eclipse during the week, but we just had a full moon lunar eclipse last week, and the week after the scope of this week's forecast, we're preparing to have a new moon solar eclipse as well. So we're right smack dab in the middle of eclipse season. One thing I'll actually talk about is sun passing over the south node, which that indicates that like exact middle point, halfway point of eclipse season. So that's what we're dealing with. I almost want to call it, the eye of the storm, but really I don't think that's an apt metaphor because we don't necessarily have a lot of peace or quiet in this middle. Like, yes, this week may be slightly less intense than either week on either side, but it's still intense. There's still a lot going on. There are a lot of life changes for many of us. We are realizing things. We're awakening. This is what happens during eclipse season. And I always say the eclipse season really ramps up not just, the new moon and the full moon, turning those into eclipses. Really the entire lunar cycle is amplified, intensified, so we will get a third quarter moon this week that it's going to be intense. It's going to be a big deal. But anyway, let's talk about kind of what to expect as we start out this week. So we just had two planets change signs. Here we call the sun and moon planets. So sun and Venus just changed signs one day prior, back on Sunday the 22nd. So the energy is dramatically different. We're still dealing with that intense eclipse season energy. So that would be, a lot of pings of intuition, a lot of realizations, especially because we had only barely just kind of recovered and started moving forward from Mercury retrograde, back in August. We had only kind of just gotten out of the post shadow when the eclipse season kind of kicked off, if that makes sense. So I think that transition from Mercury retrograde, Mercury post shadow to now these eclipses, I think it's really triggered a lot of people. It's triggered a lot of awakenings, realizations, life changes. It's been intense for myself and many others. So yes, we are continuing to experience that. But the difference is, as we start out this week, we have Sun in Libra, Venus in Scorpio. Both of those placements are debilitated. Sun is in fall in Libra, Venus is in detriment in Scorpio. So they are both showing that we're feeling a little bit out of place right now. So if you feel a bit awkward or strange, it's not just the eclipse season, although that could do it too. Part of it is feeling obscured. Like, these are fall energies, and fall, I love fall. It's my favorite season. But it's such a weird time. I think in some ways it could be awkward or like kind of off kilter. Like if you think about Halloween, it's all, scary and twisted and weird and dark. That's kind of the energy of fall to a lesser extent as well. On the other hand, though, I do think these Libra and Scorpionic energies, they can be very fashionable. They can be very socially intelligent and focused on relationships and things like that. So we're exploring more themes. These are the types of themes that we're starting to explore more as we get deeper into fall. But again, I wanted to emphasize that these are detriment energies. I think fall itself is kind of like a detriment type of season. I'm pretty sure detriment means like to rot or decay, and literally in fall, so much appears to be rotting and decaying. But that's a natural part of life, as you know. And it really, I do think, kind of heightens our senses. We become more hyper aware, more intellectual when the weather gets colder, the climate gets colder. But we also become more emotional as well. We become, more fixated on those relationships. And that's why fall can be so romantic. And it's really a very complex season as well. I do think this is generally the most complex part of the zodiac. Virgo and Libra specifically, and I know Virgo is technically a summer sign. But even as we get into fall, Libra, Scorpio, etc., these are very complex energies. They're very complicated, very multifaceted. So that's kind of what we're dealing with. You may feel outside of the box, but these debilitated energies, they are more objectively difficult, but they are not without their benefits. Okay, there are kind of hidden superpowers in the debilitated placements. So being outside of the box, I think that's a great metaphor, because we may feel alienated, we may feel, estranged, we may not feel like ourselves, We may not, relate to the people and the pastimes that we normally do. But that in itself is crucial because it allows us to see things from a different perspective. We can explore on our own. We become more independent and, independently thinking when we experience these debilitated placements. So it's very valuable, and it's very valuable for innovation as well. Again, thinking outside the box. Yes, it may be a little bit lonely outside the box, but it can also be so valuable for learning and information. Anyway, let's get into the actual kind of day-by-day forecast. I do have a few different days that I wanted to show you the charts for this week. The first one is just the start of the week. I like to always start with the start, which is Monday. In this case, Monday, September 23rd. The only real thing I wanted to mention just in passing is that this is the first day that we have Sun completely in Libra. It's the first day that Sun is in Libra all day, if that makes sense. So again, we're just coming off of that fall equinox in the northern hemisphere, and we're entering Libra season, entering fall as well. Let's go to Tuesday, though. So for Tuesday, September 24th, this is where we get a third quarter moon at 2 degrees Cancer. My notes say Gemini, and that's clearly incorrect. Okay, so Sun is at 2 degrees Libra, and it's being squared by the moon, which will reach 2 degrees Cancer. It looks like just barely afternoon Eastern Standard Time. And the reason why this is so significant is that quarter moons will shake you up almost as much as full moons, and sometimes more than full moons. So this is a big deal. You're going to feel this. This is one of the most active parts of the lunar cycle. It is interesting as well, Sun is in fall in Libra, so Sun is debilitated, like I was just talking about, but Moon is at home in Cancer. So this is really, the Moon is really stealing the show. Not only are we in eclipse season, so it's all about the Moon anyway, but Moon is at home for this third quarter moon. So we may feel very intuitive, very, very perceptive, both inwardly and outwardly. Third quarter moons are a great time for taking action. This is it. We're actually entering the fourth quarter of the lunar cycle, completing the third quarter. So as we get into this last phase of the lunar cycle, things become more non-physical. Our inner worlds become more vibrant, our dreams, our thoughts, our feelings, etc. So this is kind of like the last time. It's the last part of the lunar cycle where we have an opportunity to change things in a dramatic way. Part of that could be mentally, emotionally, our perspective we can change at this time, but also physically as well. If you do need to take some kind of literal action, some kind of literal change, changing something major in your life, changing a living situation, a job, a relationship, etc. This would be one of the more auspicious times to do so, generally speaking, because third quarter moons and squares in general, the square aspect, they are conducive to change. They are all about change. And that's why they can be so stressful, especially for those of us that don't like change. We may want to resist this, but resisting it, what you resist will persist. If resisting this will just result in stress and anxiety, because this is pushing us to change your perspective, change something about your routine. All of us need to change something. It depends on where the sun and moon fall in our natal charts, where does 2 degrees Cancer, for instance, fall in your natal chart. That symbolizes an area that you may need to change on and around Tuesday, September 24th. Let's jump ahead to Thursday, though. So Thursday, September 26th, this is the day where Mercury leaves Virgo and Mercury will join the Sun in Libra. So Mercury's catching up. Mercury is, we are way out of the whole eclipse, cycle, eclipse, that was really August, and it kind of lingered through the post shadow into the first week of September. We are completely away from that now. Mercury is traveling full speed ahead. It's catching up to the sun. So that indicates that I believe Mercury is approaching, about the fastest speed that it gets. It's working its way up there. But with Mercury entering Libra, this is a very intellectual energy. Mercury in Virgo was also very intellectual. I think the main difference is that Mercury was exalted in Virgo. So Virgo is kind of like the ultimate sign for learning and communication and efficiency and things like that. So we enjoyed that for the last month, or it wasn't even a month. It was just a few weeks. But now, as Mercury enters Libra, this is still a very strong sign for Mercury. It's still a great sign for, contemplating and thinking things through. But I think sometimes the downside of Mercury in Libra is that we can get lost in the analysis. Like Libra almost analyzes too much. And you could argue that's the same about Virgo too. But the difference is, I think, Libra can not always be the most efficient. I feel like now I'm criticizing Libra. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just explaining, Mercury's no longer exalted, but it's still a very strong Mercury sign. It's still, I think fall in general is a very, intellectual time, very rational. So this is kind of just what we're experiencing. Mercury in Libra is also, it's not just focused on like learning and contemplating, it's focused on relationships, finding balance, finding harmony, etc. So that's kind of what we're doing on some level. But again, there are huge dramatic changes that are happening right now because of eclipse season. So yeah, that's pretty much what I have to say. Sunday, September 29th. This is, of course, the last day that I will focus on for this forecast. But we do have this really interesting phenomenon where, Mercury, which, as I said, just entered Libra, Mercury will catch up to the sun and Mercury will conjoin the sun, and it does so in a very interesting place. Technically, if you want to be real technical, we won't get that exact Mercury-Sun conjunction until Monday, September 30th, which we'll talk about in the next forecast. I wouldn't even usually talk a whole lot about Mercury conjunct the sun, but it's very interesting because basically we have a triple conjunction on Sunday / kind of Monday as well. You can see here, noon Eastern Standard Time, Sun, South Node, and Mercury are all conjunct at 6 degrees Libra. Technically, they're not like precisely all at the same exact place because here, again at noon Eastern Standard Time, Sun is actually at the very last minute of the 7th degree of Libra, and Mercury is at the second minute of the 7th degree of Libra. So if you want to get really technical, Mercury and the Sun are actually almost a full degree apart, even though they're both at 6 degrees Libra. That's why that technical conjunction won't happen till Monday. But anyway, that's beside the point. Why is this significant? Okay, so let's talk about what Mercury conjunct the Sun would normally be anyway, and just disregarding the South Node just for a moment. So Mercury conjunct the sun, you would think like, well, Mercury is communication and learning and information. So if you put that mental energy and you put it by the sun would supercharge it, right? So we'd have like super strong mental energy. That's actually not the case. And that's not really, that is how many conjunctions work, but that's not generally how conjunctions work with the sun. Anytime a planet conjoins the sun, it becomes completely obscured. It's not visible at all. It's kind of like engulfed by the sun from our perspective. That's what it looks like. So that's why, with Mercury conjunct the sun in particular, that usually indicates a time where we can be, we can have mental burnout. We may be very busy or very immersed in information or learning, but again, like our nervous systems can kind of get out of balance. We may be too busy learning too much. We are like seeking ultimate efficiency, but sometimes if we have too much mental energy, it can become inefficient or unsustainable. We can burn ourselves out. I think with energies like this, I always recommend to drink lots of water, get your electrolytes for sure, take rests, take breaks, not only physically but mentally as well when you can. Because it's just so easy to burn ourselves out with this type of energy. And especially, too, considering that it's the middle of eclipse season, you probably have a lot to think about right now. There are probably some major life changes going on for you. There are pretty much for everyone. Some of us will be hit harder than others by this eclipse season, but we are all going through it. We're all experiencing major changes. So there is a lot to think about. That's fine. But just, take it with a grain of salt. Literally, salt is an electrolyte. Get your electrolytes. What else? Yeah, just, stop and smell the roses once in a while. Like, I think that is so crucial, not just for Mercury conjunct the sun, but eclipse season as well, and just in life. Like, we have to slow down every once in a while. Especially many of you that are into astrology, you are all about, self-improvement, and you're constantly like working on learning and working on this and that. Like, slow down and take a break once in a while and do things that are truly healthy for you. Anyway, I'm not your dad. I'm not your mom. But what else was I gonna say? Okay, so we already have that dynamic going on, but then now with Mercury and the Sun both basically conjunct the South Node at the same time, that's very interesting. It's very telling. It means that we may be privy to some very strange or unusual information at this time. We may make some kind of breakthrough right now, but again, go slowly, like pace yourself because we don't want to burn out. But there may be some very interesting information right now. If I had to speculate, I would say it may be about your past, especially if you have placements around 6 degrees Libra, or to some extent, if you have placements around 6 degrees of any cardinal sign, Capricorn, Aries, or Cancer, as well as Libra. You may really learn something new, something something very meaningful, something very impactful. This can be distressing sometimes. Sometimes we might learn something that we don't want to know because it changes things. It changes the rules of the game. And, with that kind of knowledge or that change of perception, it's almost like a responsibility. It requires kind of action or, whatever. It requires a decision. So that's kind of what I would expect from this. What else could I say? I always say that when planets conjoin the South Node, it's a turning point. We're at some kind of turning point, some kind of checkpoint, crossroads, etc. So even though this is not an eclipse at all, it's like there is this kind of weird eclipse energy. Eclipse energy, in case you're not familiar, it's weird. It's trippy. It almost seems like psychedelic. It makes life feel like a movie. Okay, so especially if you have Sun or Mercury strong in your charts, or again if you have those placements around 6 degrees of the cardinal signs, you just may learn some very strange information. You may change your perspective to something very unusual. This is a really weird time. Mixing, Sun, Venus, and Mars all debilitated with this eclipse energy and these placements on the South Node. It's a weird time, and so the more we can be open to this weirdness and open to how strange life can be, the more we can capitalize on this. We can really utilize this to our advantage. But again, this is one of those things where if you are really resistant to change, this is going to be harder for you. We have to roll with the punches. That's something I was just talking about recently with someone, is that like, you can view astrology in two different ways. You can view it as, okay, how do I, look at the transits, and how do I, kind of learn to expect what's happening, anticipate the changes, and do the right things to make the most of the different energies. That's one way, that's very proactive. It's very responsible. But I view it as from a different perspective as well. I think another way of looking at it is astrology is like weather. It's going to come and go regardless of what you're doing. So sometimes it's just about accepting what's happening and just kind of just experiencing it, and just, waiting and just knowing that whatever this energy is, it'll turn into something else. It's kind of like we're out like in a field or something, and if it wants to be sunny, it's going to be sunny. If it wants to be rainy or stormy, it's going to storm, and that storm will be temporary. It's not going to last forever, but we have to just embrace it. We don't have shelter, I guess. In this metaphor, we're just kind of out there. Maybe we're like a tree or something, or a wild animal. I don't know, but we don't have any shelter. We just have to experience it as it is. So I do think there's some element of surrender there. I forgot why I even started talking about that, but anyway, that's pretty much what I have for you for this week. I hope you enjoyed that. Definitely tune in next week, because we do have, again, that new moon solar eclipse happening at 10 degrees Libra, and that will happen actually on October 2nd. So I look forward to seeing you then. Thank you so much for watching. As always, if you are interested in getting a reading from me, check out my website, or you can email me as well. All of that information is in the description. Okay, thanks so much for watching. Have a fantastic week. I'll see you next week.